Here in New South Wales, we're lucky to have some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. I, like many of you, have great memories swimming, surfing, and spending time with family and friends at the beach. When we go to the beach, we never imagine that we may not come home. But sadly, over the past year, 55 people tragically drowned on the New South Wales coastline. Lifeguards and surf lifesavers do an amazing job managing the safety of members of the public in the water at over 150 beaches throughout New South Wales. But with increased population growth, particularly around regional coastal areas, increased use of the coastline, and social media drawing people to beautiful yet isolated locations, there's many high-risk sites where if you get into difficulty, there's little that can be done to assist you imminently. So we ask ourselves, how can we reduce the risk of drowning and injury? More specifically, when we consider these things, are surf lifeguarding services, surf lifesaving services, and support operations still at the highest risk sites throughout New South Wales? Moreover, are we providing lifeguarding services, surf lifesaving services, and support operations at the highest risk times of year and the highest risk times of day? We're working to answer these questions through a project that I'm leading known as Coastal Insights Safer Coast for the Future. And this project aims to reduce the risk of drowning and injury at beaches, shore platforms, and coastal waterways throughout New South Wales through risk analysis models and frameworks and providing insights and recommendations to coastal safety stakeholders. At this stage, I would like to acknowledge the support and funding provided by the New South Wales Government through Resilience New South Wales in supporting this project. So conceptually, there's three key elements that we consider that contribute towards the risk of drowning and injury. The hazardousness of the environment, more plainly, the beach morphology and hydrodynamics. The exposure element, plainly put, the number of beach and water users. And the vulnerability element, the hazard awareness, behaviours and competence of those groups that use particular sites. Through this presentation today, I'm going to focus on the exposure element. So up until recently, the only exposure data we've had available to analyse is data collected by lifeguards and surf lifesavers. When these personnel are providing a service, they record the numbers of people on the beach and the numbers of people in the water. However, this is limited to patrolled beaches at patrolled times. Moreover, over peak summer periods, their primary task is managing the safety of members of the public in the water. Therefore, they may not have the time or time to actually collect this data, and it can be very difficult to undertake counts at busy beaches. And this is where we began investigating other approaches. And with high-frequency, high-resolution aerial imagery captured frequently along large sections of the New South Wales coastline, Nearmap was the perfect fit. This is Bondi Beach, perhaps one of the most iconic beaches in Australia. And with the high-resolution aerial imagery being captured at resolutions of 5.5 to 7.5 centimetres, we were able to identify and detect individual beach and water users. So that's exactly what we did. A team of researchers went about systematically analysing high-resolution aerial imagery in spatial mapping software. And our teams identified different types of beach and water users that have different risk profiles associated with them. This included beach users. We identified shade structures such as umbrellas, and we've been going through analysing the likely use or the likely number of people obscured by these structures. We could identify swimmers, and where the beach was patrolled, those swimmers inside the red and yellow flags and outside the red and yellow flags. We identified surfcraft users and those using ocean pools. At a number of other sites, we also identified other users that were relevant, which may be paddleboard users or those within recreational boats. And this exercise has been extremely successful. With the methodology that we've developed and refined, we've been able to accurately count and identify beach and water users, and this process has been replicable, and we've found a high level of consistency between our researchers. We've also compared the results of this analysis with data collected on the ground by lifeguards and surf lifesavers. And we've found a high level of agreement in low to moderate use scenarios. So what does this actually look like? If we look a little closer, in the image on the top right-hand side, this is what our research teams see when we're analysing beach users. Where those people are lying down on a towel, we have considerable contrast and we can easily identify those people. Where those people are standing up, there's a much smaller surface area, but they also cast some shade, and we can see those people. To the bottom left, this is what we see when we're identifying surfcraft users in the water. And the resolution is such that we can identify specific subcategories, such as bodyboarders, those on shortboards, and those on longboards. To the bottom right are the swimmers in the surf zone. These are perhaps the most difficult group to capture due to things such as the water turbidity, swash zone, and we've got glare coming into account as well. But we've been able to achieve a high level of accuracy. So if we go back to Bondi Beach, this was an image that was captured over the peak summer period. You can see people along the beach and in the water. We've undertaken some analyses on this, and we can tell you that there's 1,810 people on the beach at this time. There's a number of shade structures, which are largely umbrellas. There's 291 swimmers between the red and yellow flags. There's also a number of swimmers outside the red and yellow flags. Surfcraft users are distributed along shore, and there's 201 of them. There are also a number of people in the ocean pool. So for the first time, we can highly accurately quantify the number and types of beach and water users across the length of the beach. And we can also understand some information about their spatial distribution. In addition to this, we can then undertake some spatial mapping, such as heat or density mapping, to understand how those people are distributed. This is a heat or density map of all beach and water users at Bondi Beach at this time. However, we can undertake this analysis on those subgroups or those types of users. The beach users, as you can see, are spread along the length of the beach, but the densest cluster is in the centre of Bondi Beach. In contrast, swimmers are centred around two clusters, in the centre of Bondi Beach and towards the northeastern end. As you can see, these are clustered around the red and yellow flags, which shows the lifeguards and surf lifesavers are doing an excellent job managing the safety of members of the public. We can also see the distribution of surfcraft users, which are outside the red and yellow flags and more towards the southwestern end of Bondi Beach. So as you can see, we can pull out and derive a considerable amount of information from just one image. And we undertake this analysis on multiple images to understand how that might change through different seasons, through different times of year, and how the usage patterns may also change with that. So back to that first image, captured over the peak summer period. If we then contrast this to a high-resolution aerial image captured through winter, we can see considerable difference. as you would expect, there's far fewer beach users. There's very few people swimming in the water, but there's still a considerable number of surfcraft users. And this is really important to understand. In addition to analysing the people component, we can also understand some things about the beach itself. This image, in contrast to the two previous images, has considerably more hazardous beach morphology and hydrodynamic conditions. We have a number of rip currents across the beach, with a particularly large rip current at the southwestern end of the beach. And these rip currents are seaward flows of water, which contribute to the largest proportion of incidents on the New South Wales coastline. So this approach really enables us to analyse the volume, patterns and distribution of beach and water users at a site-specific scale. And this is really critical to help inform strategic and operational decision-making. Things such as how a service is best provided at a specific site. But this is just the start. We can analyse this high-resolution aerial imagery on a multi-site scale. And this analysis we have actually undertaken across 650 beaches throughout New South Wales. And through this analysis, we're now able to quantify the relative use of beaches throughout large sections of coastline and compare their use by different types of beach and water user groups. We're also undertaking some analysis of shore platforms, in particular their use by rockfishers and other users. So when we broaden this out to that multi-site scale, this is Waverley. We can see Bondi Beach in that analysis that we've undertaken on the right-hand side. In addition to this, we've undertaken the analysis at Tamarama Beach in the centre and Bronte Beach on the left-hand side. We can see that these beaches are far smaller than Bondi Beach, but are still used by a considerable number of people. We can also understand and start to get an idea of the different types of use at these different beaches. In addition, we can undertake this heat or density mapping to understand the highest density of use along this section of coastline. In addition, we can undertake wide-ranging statistical analysis on both the beach type, or the beach use, how that changes through seasons, and how those usage profiles also change. On the left-hand side, we've got the typical number of beach and water users at Bronte Beach, Tamarama Beach, and Bondi Beach. And we've got two scenarios, summer and winter. As we can see, Bondi Beach is considerably busier than the other two sites. However, unsurprisingly, each site is much busier in summer relative to winter. To the right-hand side, we can then break this down by types of use across those beaches and across the seasons. What we can see in this analysis is that beach use predominates throughout the year. However, the proportion of beach users decreases in winter relative to summer. Likewise, if we look at that water use, over the summer period, a considerable proportion of the water users are swimming. If we contrast that to winter, we see a considerable swing towards surfcraft users. Understanding these patterns is really critical, as these users each have different risk profiles associated with them. Surfcraft users are typically more competent in the water than those swimming. In addition, they have a form of flotation if they do get into difficulty. So we can compare beach and water use across patrolled and unpatrolled beaches along large sections of coastline. As the high-resolution aerial imagery captured by Nearmap can span very wide extents, we can also undertake that analysis across very wide extents. and look at the proportional use of those sites to one another. However, although it's captured frequently, it's not frequently enough for us to understand the patterns that may occur weekly, daily, or even hourly. And this is where we can bring in the understanding that we've developed through the relative use of one site to another and align that with the data collected by surf lifeguards and surf lifesavers to provide us a really good understanding of the likely use of unpatrolled sites outside of those periods. We're also bringing in coastal monitoring cameras to help us gather additional data. So where that high frequency data is captured at a patrolled beach, these relationships can be used to model the likely use at unpatrolled beaches across all times of year and all times of day. Now we can see what this looks like on a very wide scale. Nearmap high-resolution aerial imagery, in a number of cases, may cover multiple local government areas, and we can compare those patrolled and unpatrolled sites to one another. In this instance, we've got Waverley on the right-hand side. However, within the same capture, we've also managed to analyse site users throughout the city of Randwick, Bayside, and Sutherland Shire. And through the analysis of this data, we can understand the relative use of these patrolled and unpatrolled beaches along this large extent of coastline. The size of the circle in this map is representative of the volume of use. The colour of the circle is representative of whether that site is patrolled or unpatrolled. And what we can see is that many of those large circles are patrolled beaches. However, we also have a number of busy sites that are currently unpatrolled. When we combine this exposure data with the other elements, namely the hazardousness of the environment and the vulnerability of users, we can quantify the risk of drowning and injury. And this is really critical as this informs the provision of lifeguarding services, surf lifesaving services, and support operations now and into the future. And we can provide these insights and recommendations to coastal safety stakeholders to aid them in their decision making. We do have a number of ongoing developments. We're currently developing a data analytics hub to assist in the strategic and operational decision making. More specifically, we're providing dashboards and reports that are being tailored to different coastal safety stakeholders to enable them to view and digest these insights and recommendations, including the analysis of high-resolution aerial imagery. And this is being provided from a site-specific to statewide scale. We're also working to further model the likely use of unpatrolled beaches and investigating the use of artificial intelligence to automatically detect beach and water users. So in summary, the analysis of high-resolution aerial imagery has enabled us to better understand the volumes, patterns, and distribution of beach and water users at sites throughout New South Wales. We can understand the comparative use of over 650 beaches throughout New South Wales. And this provides us an in-depth understanding of the patterns and distribution on that wider scale. And in conjunction with those other elements, this exposure data enables us to quantify the relative risk of drowning and injury. And this will help us ensure lifeguarding services, surf lifesaving services, and support operations are at the highest risk sites through the highest risk times of year and the highest risk times of day. And what this means for you now and into the future is that when you go to the beach, we hope to ensure that the right services can be in the right place at the right time, and you can go home with only great memories. However, you also play a part in this, and I would always encourage you to swim at a patrol beach, but more specifically, swim between the red and yellow flags. Lastly, I would just like to acknowledge my team of researchers who have undertaken this extensive analysis throughout the New South Wales coastline. And I'd like to pay particular tribute to the lifeguards and surf lifesavers that manage the safety of all of us on the New South Wales coastline. Thanks very much.